Good evening. Talking about stress, that's what I'm experiencing right now. I actually, when I was invited to do this, I thought about it. I said, oh, great. And as soon as I hit the send key, I went, oh, my goodness, what am I doing? I'm going to be standing in front of a group of people. That is stress. Stress is about sometimes feeling overwhelmed or with what may come or may happen or is actually about to happen. And it's how we cope and react to it that determines whether or not we're actually feeling stress. Two people may experience the exact same thing, and one person may feel stress, the other person may not feel anything at all. As a family medicine practitioner, my goal is to treat both the patient in terms of medical conditions and how the patient is feeling, his overall well-being. So my concern is not only the cut he has, but how he feels as a result of that cut. And that comes into also what happens with the family around him sometimes. It's quite often a man or woman will come in and they have a caregiver who's taking care of them, a family member. And I will find myself sometimes turning to the caregiver near the end of the visit and saying, how are you doing? Because the process of taking care of someone who is not doing well or who's ill can itself create stress for the caregiver. So one of the things that we'll discuss about is how we cope with stress, what we do. I find myself often recommending to patients things that are not necessarily traditional medication. Like, don't just take that pill or don't just do that. I have often told patients, you know what, one of the things you need to do is take a walk, do yoga, practice meditation. These are things designed to relieve what's going on in your mind, because stress is a mental process that manifests itself in our body. Initially, it was I guess you could say stress was how our body reacted to a threat, and it was a survival thing. Tigers coming at you, adrenaline pumps, breathing increases, all that's great for short term. But when you find that you're feeling your heart pumping when you're at home, or you're sweating and there's nothing going on, or you can't rest, these are all stress responses that happen now in modern life that are usually occurring when there is no perceived threat. It's just something that our body's still responding to. So that's what we'll talk about further. And let me introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Donnie Watson, PhD. He's the program director for Thelma McMillen. Dr. Watson has over 25 years of management experience in directing programs that educate and treat both adolescent and adult substance abusers and their families. He has expertise in evidence-based prevention and treatment interventions, respectively. He has over 50 publications, articles, and book chapters related to a variety of substance abuse issues. Prior to coming to the Thelma McMillen Center, he served as a senior principal investigator at UCLA's Integrated Substance Abuse Programs. He previously directed the Cork Institute on Alcohol and Drug Abuse at Morehouse School of Medicine, where he was also an associate professor of psychiatry. He completed an APA-approved clinical psychology internship with specialty in child and adolescent psychiatry at Grady Memorial Hospital, Emory University School of Medicine. Upon completion of his internship, he served as director of child and adolescent research, psychology division at Emory University School of Medicine. He earned his BA from St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, and his doctorate from Vanderbilt University in clinical psychology with minor emphasis in alcohol studies and experimental design. He is a certified compassion fatigue educator with an emphasis on helping the caregiver maximize their potential in the workplace, as well as being certified in the implementation of seeking safety treatment modality for PTSD and substance abuse. Dr. Watson is a certified addictions treatment counselor, level 5, a member of the California Association for Alcohol and Drug Educators, and a member of the Addiction Counselor Certification Board of California. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Watson.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, who is that guy? But thank you so much. Normally, for a presentation like this, that's more of an academic one. So as I started going, I'm like, oh man. But thank you so much for being here today. It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you because I think this whole topic of stress, everybody feels it and we all feel it differently. It's like our world is everyone is stressed out about something. And in particular, our children and our teens, I really feel bad for them. For those of you who have kids, for your grandparents who know about their academic studies, it's like everybody has an AP class. Are there any regular classes? I thought 4.0 was great, so now it's like 4.8, 5.2, and I'm thinking, so it's on and on, and they are overwhelmed. And if you look at sports and other things that they have to do, I really feel bad for them, seriously. Then you got the social media, you got bullying, you got all those types of things. So for parents, caregivers, and grandparents, we try to deal and help them as best we can. So before I get started, I want you to bear with me, have a very simple exercise, and I'm gonna get stressed out if I don't have it in my pocket like I thought I put it in my pocket, but here it is. So do me a favor. If you've heard this before, please don't spoil it for everyone else. So here we go. How do you put a giraffe into a refrigerator? Anybody? Cut off its neck and put him in the refrigerator. Okay. The correct answer is you open the refrigerator, you put in the giraffe, and close the door. This question tests whether you tend to do simple things in an overly complicated way. Okay, guys, doing good. Second question, how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator? You can't?
Because the giraffe is already there.
Okay. Correct answer is you open the refrigerator, you take out the giraffe, you put in the elephant, and you close the door. This tests your ability to think through the repercussions of your previous actions. Okay. Number 3. Only got one more after this. The Lion King is hosting an animal conference. All the animals attend except one. Which animal does not attend? The lion? Elephant, lion, okay. The correct answer is the elephant. The elephant is in the refrigerator. You just put him in there. Okay, one more question. There's a river you must cross, but it is used by crocodiles, and you do not have a boat. How do you manage it? Get on the giraffe? Get on giraffe, okay. Okay, so correct answer, you jump into the river and swim across. Have you not been listening? All the crocodiles are attending the animal meeting. This tests whether you learn quickly from your mistakes. And by the way, when you give this test to 4 or 5 years old, 5-year-old kids, guess what? They're like 99%. You know why? They just answer the question. They don't overly complicate things. Okay, so today we're going to talk about stress, what it's like for our teens, causes of stress, what are the signs of stress, and some solutions. I think the one thing, if you look at the first picture, I probably wouldn't do that. Maybe at 18 or 19, maybe 17, maybe. But today, definitely not. No way, no how, right? So a lot of what I'm going to talk about with our teens is that their brains and how they look at the world is very different from the way that we look at it. And science has taught us that now teens, say a 14-year-old is only 60% of what they're going to be. What is the average age? What is the age for a mature male brain? 24? 27? 24, 25. What about female? 23, 24. So women mature sooner, and guys, sometimes we never catch up. That's just how it goes. We try, though. So what that tells us, we have to have a different calculus about how we look at their decisions. This is why, if they want to do something that you know is not right for them to do, you have to hold your ground, because guess what? You have more thinking power, and you also have your experience. Okay? So, next slide. In the old days, we used to have to say, next slide, and somebody would push a button for you. So, one of the things that I've discovered, sometimes we have a different understanding about what we think stresses teens out. So the best way to find out is to ask them. So if you look at the top left, what does that look like to you? Studying? Okay. What about over here, top right? Okay. Test. Down here?
Peer pressure.
Left or right?
Left.
Okay. Okay. Keep those in mind, and you'll see why in just a second. I put this in just to remind us adults about what stress is like for us. All of us have probably had a moment in our lives where we were like overwhelmed with stress. And the difference is, for most of us, hopefully we have the ability to take a step back and figure out the best way to proceed. Whereas with teens, because their brains are not developed, they tend to be more impulsive in making decisions. And so stress affects them differently than it does us. So let's hear what teens have to say. This is short, I promise you, maybe 2 minutes, a minute and a half, but I want you to hear it from their voice. Alex told me just to press this twice and it would start to play. There we go.
The things that worry me, school grades. I'm going to be driving soon, so I guess driving on the road with other people who are drunk, possibly.
What causes drama is that when you go out with a boy, you always know that somebody likes that boy.
Some of the stress I feel in my life is maybe comes from school or my parents. I get into a few arguments with my parents.
School is pretty stressful, tests and quizzes and homework and studying and all this and all that.
Mainly, I worry about my grades. I don't really like having bad grades. Like if I get a C or a D, that really upsets me.
They come up to you and say, oh, you have my man, oh, you have my girl. We're going to fight over this. I'm going to start saying all this about you.
What's hard about high school is, you know, 8th grade, they're kind of just easy on you, and then you go into 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and they get harder on you, and they're getting harder on you because you need to go to college.
There's definitely some pressure and stress in my life with trying to balance so many different activities and the academics and everything.
Senior year, I'm in a giant pool of stress because I have to figure out everything that's going to happen next year, moving on in my life, and kind of sometimes I just need to step back from it and, you know, sit down and think to myself, okay.
Music does help me with my stress.
I like to be by myself when I'm upset.
Playing the drums is a huge escape. It gets a lot of anger out, and it's physically exercising. It's just really fun. You get to hit things and make loud noises. So really trying to find those times where I can just take a little step back from all the pressure and the stress, that really helps. And so I try to do that as much as possible.
It's all going to happen. It's going to be okay. You just have to take it as it comes, roll with the punches.
Okay, so that's in their own voice. I think, once again, what we think is stressful to them may be different. So the next slide comes from data from about 36,000 teens across the United States. And it was created to raise teens' awareness of mental health issues and available resources. A group in San Francisco actually started this. Those of you who are reading the PowerPoint as I go along can see that. But it has some really interesting data, so let's look at what that says. That's what I just talked about. Okay. So, teens, how often are you stressed? Now, this is from about 36,000 teenagers from across the country. They say about 45% of the time. And below that, sometimes about 37%. So if my math is right, about 82% of the time, teens are feeling stressed all the time or sometimes. That's a lot by any matrix, right? So I think for each person it's a little different. So here's some signs, and I'll just focus in on maybe a couple that I see. Let's start down here with experimentation with drugs or alcohol, because that's the program that I direct. So a lot of kids who try to decompress and try to fit in with the use of alcohol and drugs, right? Now, you may see changes in their temperament. I always say to parents and grandparents, trust what you see, what you hear, and what you feel with your children and grandchildren. You know them. And if something is different and off, something is probably different and off. Okay? So, next slide. And what stresses you out the most? Number one, relationships. Number two, teachers. Number three, parents. And number four is college. Now, others, such a combination of different things, but that's what the first slide that I showed you had, these different depictions of the top four of things that teens say stress them out. Additional causes of stress, I think the cyberbullying is something that we're more and more aware of. The last one, these kids' schedules are so tight, I don't know how they have time to really enjoy high school. AP classes, then they have sports, then they have music, and sometimes they don't get a chance just to relax and be a kid. And the truth of the matter, people who are most successful in life are not Mensa Society people with 180 IQ. The people who are most successful in life, average to above average intelligence, and they work hard. They have a good work ethic. I always say, show up on time early. Show up 15 minutes early. Look good when you get there, and you can fake the rest. Believe that you can do it, be on time, work hard, you'll be okay. Anyway, so here's some other causes that we talked about. Let's go to the next slide. I think I have 20 minutes. I want to make sure that I'm staying on point. So somebody, I'm sure, in the audience has timed me. How long have I been talking? 20 minutes? Okay. That's a good one. Now, this one is very interesting. What are you most likely to do when stressed? Number one, talk to friends. 2, eat. 3, nothing. Other, work out, drugs, and drinking. So, what can kids do to cope with stress? I think the one that, number 3, break goals and tasks into smaller chunks is one that I like. Now, do I get nervous when I do a presentation? Of course. But it's good stress for me. You know why? Because I'm prepared. Dr. Gelbart told me that my slides were lost. That I couldn't have, my slides were not going to be available. And I was like, okay. It didn't stress me out because I knew it, right? So preparation allows me not to be stressed. So good stress can work in your favor to have you to attain certain goals. Okay, proper sleep. This is the one that I love. I get 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night, and I love it. No matter what I do. Because I give my all at my job. When I go home, turn it off. And working out and stuff like that. So I think everyone has to find out what works for them. And I think for your loved ones, for your kids, and for your grandkids, you have to help them along that path. And what I'm also beginning to see is that now we're seeing some of the grandparents are now having to raise their children's children. And then that's another level of stress. You've already done it one time. Then you got to do it twice. And you love them, but having to do that twice is really tough. Okay. What resources do they use to get help? This really was interesting to me. So the number one places that teens go for help is online. And we know about what you can find online, right? But that's the age in which we live. That's where they go. Nothing other, therapists, school resources. What's not on that list? Parents. I don't know why, but parents are not on that list. I think it'd be nice for them to do a follow-up study and to kind of tease out some of that. Okay. I mean, everyone wants to know how they can help their teens deal with and manage stress. So, again, everyone is different. I think, number 3, be ready and open to talk when your child is available. I mean, things change, for our kids. I mean, when they're 10 years old, you can't get them from being wrapped around your leg. It's like, let me go. What are you doing? Oh, mommy, daddy, I'll never do drugs. Anybody that does drugs, they're stupid, they're dumb. 14 years old. Hey, honey, I picked out a really nice shirt for you. Well, that's dumb. Nobody wears that. You're stupid. Like, what? Get out of my room. You mean the room that I'm allowing you to stay in until you're 18? That I might start charging you some rent because of your behavior. So they change. And then you have a little ride until they get to their mid-20s when they what? Grow up a little bit and understand what you've been through. So you can't overreact to their shenanigans, although you get tested and pushed. Okay, so some of these seek professional help when you need it. I think we have to, for parents, you try to be as good a role model as you can. And I'll talk about that on the very last slide. Okay. 3 things to tell your teen all the time and 4 things to avoid. Sometimes, and I actually do this with my staff, I don't accuse them of anything. My first thing is, hey, I need your help to try to figure out what is going on. Help me to understand what's going on with you. That way you're not accusing them, you're trying to get information. But as all of you know, some of your children and teens and grandchildren, they have some different personalities. So what works with one may not work with the other. The second I'm so proud of you. And it doesn't have to be for an AP class. They did great on a test, but for little things. Hey, you took care of the dog. Hey, thank you so much. Because you don't want people, at least I don't, to think I only notice them when they do big, heroic things, right? And I like this one. So I got 7 words to ask you, because you say, hey, how are you feeling? You want to talk? No. What happened? I don't want to talk about it. Are you angry? I'm not going to say anything. So I tell you what, we're going to play a game. I'm going to give you about 7 words and humor me and pick out one. So in other words, remember this, you are smarter than they are. They're only operating with 60% of what they're going to be, so you have to get a little creative, and you have to pick the right times to have conversations. The don'ts. Stop being so moody. If you say that to most adults, they're probably going to get defensive, right? Like, what do you mean? And even if somebody is being moody and disrespectful, one thing you say, look, you have a right to be a little upset or be angry, but I also expect you to be respectful of me. You can have a bad day, but that doesn't mean that you can disrespect me. Because I think we do each other and kids a disservice when they think it's okay to disrespect you. Because what you know and what I know, most of you, the stuff and things that we're sometimes put up with family members, and we would not tolerate from anyone else on the planet, not even close. So we have to try to prepare them for some disappointments in a loving and caring way. You never talk to me. Probably not. Because as kids grow up, individuation takes over and becomes tribal. They are comfortable with their friends, right? So what I try to do with teens is talk about things of interest, whether it be sports, fashion, music. Hey, what do you think about that song? Or what do you think? And if you build a relationship, it will come organically. It will. How was your day? Same thing. Just have to find ways to get them to talk to you. The last one is about how they dress. Are you going out like that? Are you going to wear that? Unless it's just totally crazy, don't die on that hill about what they want to wear. It's like, don't make that your fight. Don't make that your fight. And I have some stress balls in the back, because believe it or not, during the day, my job, sometimes I get stressed in what I do. I don't ever give people any recommendations of things I don't do myself. So I'll sit back from my desk, take a deep breath and do this, because that's something that I can do. I'm not going to go through a yoga exercise. I'm not going to meditate. I'm not going to do that. So thank you, folks. You've been gracious. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Dr. Joshua Lichtman, psychiatrist. Dr. Josh Lichtman has been practicing psychiatry for the last decade. Dr. Lichtman is passionate about mindfulness practice and psychiatry and is constantly trying to blend the two. He is a board-certified adult psychiatrist, and although he primarily focuses on psychopharmacology, he is trained in various therapy modalities, including CBT, DBT, psychodynamic therapy, and is currently in the middle of his EMDR certification. Dr. Lichtman is board certified in addiction medicine and serves as a clinical instructor at UCLA, where he has been supervising doctors in training for the last 8 years. Dr. Lichtman studied physiology while he was an undergraduate student at UCLA, then received his medical education at Western University of Health Sciences, then went on to complete his internship and psychiatry residency at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Dr. Lichtman was named to the Super Doctor list in Los Angeles Magazine for 2015 and 2016. Please invite him to the stage with a warm round of applause. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming, everybody. Let's see here. Okay, Well, I think I kind of got the easiest part of this topic. And I'm actually going to put it back onto you guys, because I think that you're probably all very familiar with the stressors of adulthood. So I'm doing exactly that. I want you guys to tell me some of the stressors that you've experienced as adults. Anyone, shout it out. Dealing with society, yeah, very much so today. Being limited?
Doing things physically?
Yeah, physical limitations. Anybody?
Disrespectfulness.
Being disrespected? Yeah, very much so. And job security, that's right, and job stress.
Sandwich generation. Between taking care of adults and your children.
That's a good one. I've never heard it phrased that way, but yeah. The sandwich generation. Technology as being a stressor. Interesting, yeah.
Getting older and aggressive driving on the freeways out here.
That you're an aggressive driver or those around you?
Others.
Yeah, sorry.
Frustration in politicians.
I've known to have a little myself. Anybody else before I give you my list? Yeah, in the back.
Spending so much of your time away from home and not being able to choose what time or what days it is that you have to be away from home. Having it be in someone else's hands completely, what your schedule is because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Very good one. Okay, I'll take you guys along. I'm not crazy about that definition, to be really frank with you, but I liked the image. That's kind of my favorite one right there. So the list that I came up with was the stress of finishing school, student debt, jobs and career building, marriage, divorce, having children, your children growing up, needing to get into the right schools and the right colleges, having sick and aging and dying parents, your own sickness and physical limitations, and those were really the main ones that I identified, along with a lot of the other ones that you guys shared. And really, I love that quote so much. I think that most of us probably wish that we were in a treehouse throwing water balloons at some of those politicians right now. So those stressors, what do they result in? So as a psychiatrist, I see all kinds of people and see how these stressors kind of impact them. And one of the main things that I often see is really kind of existential angst, or like the midlife crisis when your dreams never kind of came to be. I see quite a bit of depression from all those stressors that we listed, a lot of anxiety and stress from that. There's also quite a bit of grief from different types of loss, whether it be, people or dreams or things or jobs, etc. And one of the things that we tend to focus on is substance abuse that results from that stress, that people go ahead and they cope by using drugs and alcohol. And all of this, really, that's kind of what we do, is we deal with the ramifications of these stressors of adulthood. And I'm just going to give you kind of the quick version of the things that we do about it. So kind of just to repeat what Dr. Watson went through, and really a lot of it has to do with good self-care. So you have to sleep enough, you have to eat right, you have to pay attention to your health maintenance, you have to really limit your drugs and alcohol. And it seems to be this common theme that we keep going back to because of what we do. You need to stay active and connected. And then from a professional standpoint, psychotherapy can be extremely helpful. There's different types of psychotherapy, but oftentimes supportive therapy or insight-oriented therapy is really kind of what seems to help people process these stressors. And then what I do quite a bit of is medications. And so there's medications to treat depression, anxiety, insomnia. There's rehab. And really kind of the overarching theme of what I think is best to kind of help to manage the stressors of adulthood is two main things. And one is actually compassion or self-compassion that we need to have for one another and ourselves, because it's actually pretty hard to be an adult in this world. And there's all kinds of so-called experts and books, but it's hard, and none of us really totally knows how to do it. And so we're all kind of just doing the best that we can. And so again, just having compassion for yourself that you're dealing with these stressors and these difficulties, in all of these ways that, that we've described. And to me, one of the most important things also is it's actually interconnectedness. So, whether it's with kids or with, the older population that Dr. Gelbart will get into, or just general adulthood, that to me, the thing that I think helps people the most is staying connected to other people. And that can come in many ways, but to me, I think that's really the best coping mechanism that we can all utilize. So that's it. These are just the graphics. Oh, sorry, I'll give you this one last one, just because I like this quote. And it's not really the Buddha, but I just said it was so people would pay attention. Thanks, guys.
Our next speaker is Dr. Mo Gilbert, PhD. He is a psychologist. Dr. Gilbert has been in practice in the South Bay since 1976. He received his PhD from the University of Southern California in 1979 and has been a licensed psychologist since 1980. In his private practice, Dr. Gilbert has worked extensively with alcohol and chemical dependency issues, including working with family members affected by problems. He's also involved with workplace stress and violence, relationship issues, sports psychology and performance enhancement, psychological effects of physical illness, anxiety, and depressive disorders. Dr. Gilbert is a founder of the Thelma McMillen Center for Alcohol and Drug Center at Torrance Memorial Medical Center and presently serves as executive director of the Thelma McMillen Center for Alcohol and Drug Treatment at Torrance Memorial Medical Center. Please invite him with a warm welcome.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'll be the third one to thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. So I get, in a sense, the easy job because I'm going to talk about the stressors of later adult life, and I am there. I'm one of you. My Medicare card, okay, 71 years old. I can talk, like I said, it's good to relate about things that I have to go through myself. I'm part of the Woodstock Generation, the baby boomers. I was at Woodstock. I'm in there somewhere. Those were the days of sex, drugs, rock and roll. We still are doing that. The drugs are a little different. Blood pressure medication, statins, Viagra. But a lot of us are still doing drugs. So we're going to talk about stressors of senior life. So first, I guess we got to keep this. I can't see. What is a senior? I mean, again, just like Dr. Lichtman, shout out what you think. What defines a senior? Surviving what? Having a teenager or being a teenager? What else? Age? Somebody said, what age? What age is senior? You know. Now, she said something I was going to say. According to AARP, can you believe, I remember when I got my ARP card, and it was like, I thought it was 55, I don't remember. Either way is fine. I thought, like, that's a senior? But what age defines senior? Perfect. Anybody older than us is a senior. And we have a great person in the audience. I don't want to embarrass her, and she's 98 years old, and she's wonderful. So, but that's a good one. Any other behavioral definitions of what a senior is?
Wisdom.
Wise, retired. What? I can't hear. I'm a senior. What? Forgetful. All right, perfect. That's always one. Let's take a look at what some of the data is, or not data. It's really what opinions are about old age, or markers. So these are the markers of old age, and they asked about 3,000 adults in this survey. A person is old when he turns 85, or he or she. I'll say either one. When they can't live independently. And notice how these data goes down. Turns 75, 62%. Frequently forgets familiar names. Finds his or her health is failing. Has trouble walking upstairs. Has bladder control problems. Is no longer sexually active. About a third of people think that's what determines a senior. Turns 65. Only about a third of people think that that's the senior age. I think that person in the back was right. The older you get, you know, what is today's 80 is yesterday's 60, whatever it was, something like that. Retires from work. Has grandchildren. Has gray hair. That's a bad one. I mean, gray hair comes at any age. And by the way, these have to do with the information I'm going to give you in a bit, because this helps define what the stressors of age are. The next survey they did, how markers of old age differ depending on who's thinking about it. So they asked people who are 18 to 29, and they asked people who are 30 to 49, and 50 to 64, and over 65. So one marker frequently forgets familiar names. And the young people said, yeah, that's it. But the older people didn't think so. So much less older people thought that's a sign of old age. Has bladder control problems. And the young people said, oh yeah, 51% of them thought that's what determines old age. But again, it was pretty close. 40% of the most seniors said that was the case. Is no longer sexually active. Again, 46% said that's the case, and 30% of the older adults said no. I mean, agreed with that. Retirement and having grandchildren. Those were the markers of old age. Another part of the survey, what are the challenges of aging? So the younger people think it's one thing, and then when they ask the older people, it wasn't the exact same thing among many areas. Memory loss. So younger people said, yeah, that's going to be a problem in old age. 57% of people thought that. Only 25% of people thought, yeah, that really is a problem. I think that's low, by the way, because I can't remember how many of my friends think it's a problem. Not able to drive. Again, big disparity. Young people thought that would be a sign of old age, a challenge of old age. A serious illness. Again, some disparity. You see the numbers on the end here to say how big the disparity between young people and old people are. Not sexually active, feeling sad or depressed, not feeling needed, loneliness, trouble paying bills, and being a burden. So there's a difference in what people say the senior life will be like, and what people who are in that life experience. What are the benefits of growing older? Again, different ways of how people see this. Young people thought they're going to have a lot more time for hobbies and interests. The older people didn't think so much. A little bit less, not too bad. Young people thought more time with the family. It was pretty close again. Young people thought they'd be doing much more volunteer work and more travel and more financial security. And then it starts getting close with less stress and not working and respect and a second career. Well, second career was quite a difference. One or two more of these things. What are the daily activities of older Americans? This was based on asking older Americans. 90% talked with their family and friends. 83 read a book or magazine, take a prescription medication, watch more than 1 hour of TV, pray, drive a car, spend time on a hobby, and so on down the list. At the bottom, have trouble sleeping. 22% only said that was the case. And then finally, oops, did I get to the last one? I guess I did. So somebody mentioned memory, and I just put this up here because memory is one of the things they make fun of us about. So this woman says, my memory is so bad, how bad is it? How bad is what? Or, I'm reaching an age where my train of thought often leaves the station without me. So, what are the stressors of later life, though? Let's take a look. And some of this will be repetitive because lots of stressors are the same, but some of these I tried to address mostly what is unique to whatever we define as later life or age. One is death of a spouse, but I also am including in there death of a child, death of a very close friend. That's one of the main losses we begin to experience as, we age and the people around us begin to age. Divorce, very bad, very stressful, very difficult for someone. I'm going to use the term senior at this point. For a senior, it's so much harder to, I have a friend who's in mid-70s who got divorced. You know what it's like to go on the internet and go on, eHarmony or something at the age of 75? It's not easy. So it's, getting back out into the world is difficult. Very big, of course, health issues. And there are two kinds of health issues that we begin to experience. One area is, life-threatening type diseases, cardiac problems, cancer, major illness and so on. And the other is the aches and pains of just our bodies getting older and arthritis and sore backs and chronic pain and, things that go with just as I say, aging. Retirement, very important stressor. Many people, and as society increases, it used to be more male than female, but now it's, getting much close on both. Our identities are wrapped up in our work. Who we are becomes what we do. And when we give that up, a lot of people are lost. And a lot of people have difficulty finding meaning and purpose. Social isolation. You start, and I'm going to be repeating some of these in the next few slides in terms of what to do and so on, but isolating socially is one of the most damaging things that happen to older people. And along that is, our children who we love. We raise our children to be independent and go on their own, and they have beautiful little grandchildren, and then they move away. And they move to, the East Coast or something. And instead of seeing them every week, we see them, once every 3 months or something. So that's a big stressor for seniors. Some others, finances. We're going, again, some people don't have this problem, but many people go from a salary to a fixed income. And now they don't have the same kind of financial resources that they used to have, which leads to housing issues. Are they going to downsize? Can they afford to live where they did? Other housing issues include, how many people have 2-story homes or more, can't walk up the stairs anymore, and then have to figure out what do they do with the home that they've lived in for 30 years and they love. Not everybody can afford to put in an elevator, although lots of people I know have elevators in their home or look for homes with elevators when they buy them. Whoops. Concerns of care. In other words, who's going to take care of me? What's going to happen to me when I'm older? What's going to happen when I have to take care of him or her? In other words, my partner, my spouse. Related to retirement, and this is important in terms of how we feel about ourselves, a reduced sense of purpose. It's like, what are we about? What do we, very often in senior life, we lose our sense of who we are because as Dr. Lichtman was talking about adult life, we gain it by raising kids, we gain it by building a career, and that begins to define us. When a lot of that goes away, it's like, what am I? Generally fears about the future, and I'm repeating this, but recent bereavements, losses, and so on. So what happens? That's a long list of stressors. What are the effects of stress? One is depression. As Dr. Lichtman talked, depression among seniors is large. More than 2 million people older than 65 suffer from diagnosed major depression. Depression leads to, believe it or not, higher medical costs. If you have emotional issues, you're going to have more likely to have medical problems because they're connected. Mind-body is connected. And this is kind of sad to believe, but older people think, well, it's normal. As I get older and I go through all these life changes, I'm supposed to feel depressed. Or not I'm supposed to, but it's normal to feel that way. And as I'll show you in a little bit, it doesn't have to be that way, okay? Age and depression don't go hand in hand. Another negative effect, anxiety. Anxiety is the most common mental issue, mental disorder. It's more common than depression, but here's the good news, by the way. Anxiety is the most common mental disorder. It's also the most treatable mental disorder. It affects 7% of seniors, and just like depression, it's not a normal part of aging. Now, there's two kinds of anxiety. There's that, I gave a talk yesterday here at the same lectern, but I'm still nervous. There's a certain amount of anxiety that is nervousness and a little concern, but it motivates us and moves us. But the difficult anxiety is the more dysfunctional anxiety, when it causes us to interfere with our way of life. And these are the various kinds of anxiety: generalized anxiety, which is a general sense of dread and fear; obsessive compulsive, those are people, obsessions are in the mind, things we think over and over, like me, I keep going back, did I close the garage? My thought is, did I close the garage door? And my action, my compulsive behavior is I keep driving back and making sure it's closed. By the way, I have never left the garage door open. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, so if you have a trauma in your life, you keep reliving it, is another form of anxiety. Panic disorder is when the anxiety is so acute and so fearful you can't even continue with the activity you're in. And phobia is fear of particular things like snakes and heights and bridges. So those are the various anxiety disorders. Another negative effect of stress, very negative, is suicide. And although seniors are only 12% of the population, they account for 18% of the suicides. I'll try to get through this. Risk increases with age. And by the way, these are low numbers because we have in a senior population what's known as silent suicide, which means people die because they don't want to live. They die of a broken heart. They die because they starve themselves. They die because they take too much medication. They die because they don't take their medication. And the cause of death is not listed as suicide. So it's even higher than that. And white males and people divorced are at higher risk. Since we all come from the Thelma McMillen Center, as Drs. Lichtman and Watson said, we all run the Thelma McMillen Center, which is our Torrance Memorial Drug and Alcohol Program. Alcohol and substance abuse is a impact of stress. And 10% of women and 20% of men drink more than is healthy. What's healthy? First off, there are people who say, I don't drink that much. I only drink 1 drink a day. Then they go home and they take a 16-ounce tumbler and they fill it with vodka, no ice, and they gobble it. And that's their 1 drink a day. So we need to know a drink is a drink is a drink. So before we even go into what's healthy, a can of beer, regular can of beer, a 6-ounce glass of wine, and about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces of a liquor like tequila, vodka, rum, etc., all have the same amount of alcohol in them. So when somebody says, I only drink beer, 6 cans of beer, a 6-pack is the same as 6 shots of liquor. So what's healthy? For seniors, it's the average of 1 drink a day, 7 drinks a week, and no more than 3 drinks at any time and that's only once a week. That's for males. Actually, for males and females, the same at that age. Males get to drink a little more for healthy drinking or low-risk drinking when they're a little bit younger. But if you're drinking more than one drink a day, you're potentially at risk for a drinking problem. In addition to alcohol, we all know about pill taking and substance abuse and opioid crisis that's going on. And it's really difficult for seniors. And why is it difficult for seniors more than maybe another part of the population? Yes, pain. You go to doctor, you get pain medication, and the way pain medication has come over the years, I'm not going to get into it, it's a whole talk, it'll be the next talk actually, but has caused a great deal of problems. And in our clinic, we see a lot of seniors who are have an addiction to pain medication, to opiates, and it's very difficult because they were never addicts to begin with. And now here they are having an addiction to something, and they're sitting in a room with a alcoholic or drug addict, and because they have to go through the same process. But anyway, so a third of people between 57 and 85 take 5 or more medications a day. Another negative effect, gambling. See, the casinos prey on seniors. They send you buses, they take you, they make sure you have quarters, they want your money. They want you to drop that money into the slot machines. And that's fine, it's fun, it's social, but for some people, they gamble away their rent money. And they get in a lot of trouble. And it is a largely growing population in senior population. So what can we do? What are some of the things? Now, some of this will be repetitive for what the other gentleman said. But this is the most important, really. Stay engaged. Don't isolate. Make sure there's people around you. And that means face-to-face, meaning being FaceTiming with people and friends is nice, and being on social media is nice, but it doesn't substitute for looking somebody in the eye and shaking their hand and putting your arm around their shoulder. So having real relationships with people is important. Build new friendships. Make sure you get out and do activities that allow you to meet new people. Get out in the world, volunteer, join a support group. We have information in the back on lots of things the hospital has to offer as well as in the community, but there are support groups for almost anything. There are support groups and there are interest groups. Support groups for caring for an aging parent, death of a child, Alcoholics Anonymous, depression, anxiety. So we have support groups for pretty much any issue you could want to get help with, as well as things you might be interested in. Other methods for coping with stress. Take care of a pet. It's really great. Plus, it gets you out, hopefully. Got to take the pet out to go do their thing. You meet other people and so on. Learn a new skill. Take a new language up. You know that there's something called, what's that? I can't remember it's the memory. It's the memory. Stress, by the way, is part of memory, because when you're under stress, you can't remember so well. Duolingo, free thing on. How many of you ever either heard or do Duolingo? Nobody in this whole room. I don't either, by the way, but my wife does. Nobody does Duolingo. It's free. Almost any language you want to learn, you can just go get that website for free, and she spends at least an hour to 2 hours every day learning Spanish. So you can learn a language. You can learn play a musical instrument. You can learn how to do computer work better. You can learn gardening, but learn a new skill. Laughter is the best medicine. Watch funny movies. There was a famous guy, he was in UCLA, he was sick, pulled himself out of the hospital, went across the street, and then rented Marx Brothers and Three Stooges and laughed himself to health. Spend time in the sunlight. In California, we don't have that much of a problem, but we have, there's something called SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, and if you don't get enough sunlight and you have that problem, you're going to have depression. I'll go through this quick because we've been talked about, but exercise is just as effective as antidepressants, studies show. So make sure you're exercising, and no matter what shape you're in, you can always do something. You can park a little further from where you're going, you can walk a few feet if that's all you can do, or you can, your body will tell you what you can do. eating right. We talked about sleep hygiene, and it's called sleep. There's things to do if you're not sleeping. Studies are showing more and more how important. Dr. Watson doesn't have this problem, but sleeping 8 hours a day at least is really important. How many of you sleep less than 8 hours a night? Wow, it's a lot. It's about 3/4 of the crowd. And then these are the ones that we work with: changing your attitude and cognitive behavior therapy. So a lot of you have heard cognitive behavior therapy. I want to say a word, it's how we feel about things, like if we're depressed or anxious, often has to do with how we think about things. So how we think, if somebody says to me, I'm sad, I cannot say to him, no, you're not. Because how you feel is how you feel. But our thinking, our thoughts drive how we feel. And as therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists, we can help people realistically alter the way they think. And if they alter the way they think, they will change how they feel. It's really as simple as, the glass is either half full or half empty. And by the way, the beauty of any kind of cognitive behavior therapy is the amount of water in the glass never has to change. If you see the glass as half empty, you're going to feel like unhappy and down and miserable. And if you see the glass as half full, you're going to be up. So the glass doesn't have to change. What changes is your attitude about it. I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to mention two more things. Well, one more quick area, which is the psychology of happiness. Psychology is a science that for 150 years has been trying to help people who are miserable and down and depressed and unhappy be okay. But the last 25 or 35 years, we have found ways. It's a different psychology of happiness. And it has to do with thinking positive, living in the now, believing in yourself, being unique. And the 7 habits, I'm going to run through this quick because I've used up my time, but the 7 habits of happy people are relationships. By the way, I've read a study where having close relationships for people who are seniors was was more valuable actually than sorry Dr. Ellis, but their visits to the doctor, the medicine they took, and most of what medicine has to offer. So being with others is a healing and brings happiness. Caring for others will increase your sense of well-being. That's just Mother Teresa. Health and wellness we've talked about. Spiritual engagement, meaning having some sense of spirituality or religion in your life will make you a happier person. It doesn't have to be religion, like necessarily going to church, but some sense of the world, there's something greater than myself out there. Mindfulness and positive thinking, learning how to relax, learning how to be in the here and now. And what should have gone on with this slide is gratitude. Every one of you should go home every night or every morning and make a gratitude list. Just say, here's the things and it could be the same the next day. And they don't have to be big things, but just what am I grateful for? And the ability to feel what that is will make you feel better. Flow is very complicated, but in a minute, what it means is, flow is, you ever do something, let's play a game or play a sport or get into some activity and you're doing it and then you look up and like 3 hours has passed and you don't know where the time went? That's a great feeling. That's what flow is. And the ability to get into that state at times is a component of happiness. And then finally, know what your strengths are and what your virtues are, and try to exercise those strengths and virtues. Thank you. And I think we do I turn it over to Dr. Ellis, or thank you for...
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. During that time, members of the committee will come around with pieces of paper in which you can write down questions you may have for our panel. So anything that's been on your mind, please jot it down and we'll go through those right after the break. So 5 minutes now. See you in a few minutes. Okay, if everyone's back, we'll start asking the panel some questions. Thank you very much. If you still have questions, feel free to give it to any of the members of the committee and they'll bring them up to me. All right. One of the first questions was about sleep. You did not talk about naps, specifically to make up if you didn't sleep 8 hours at night. Either you have anything to address that?
Yeah, I'll address it. I'm going to give a very unpopular answer, but you should not nap, actually, because if you nap, you throw off your body's regular rhythm as far as sleeping. And so if you nap, you probably won't sleep that well the following night. So it's better to just kind of brave it and go to bed early. So no naps is what I tell people regularly.
I fully disagree. I nap every day. And he's much younger than I am.
No, you shouldn't nap, though.
I think that what he means, though, or I think if you're having sleep problems and difficulty falling asleep, or have early awakenings and can't get back to sleep, then part of sleep hygiene is not napping. But as a normal, like I sleep fine, but I also nap. And those of you that nap and sleep fine, I believe it's okay.
Okay. Oh, here's a question for, this is more insurance related. For seniors seeking or needing therapy, where do they find therapists who accept Medicare?
Great question. It's not, Medicare, first off, is great insurance. And for mental health, it's great insurance. And Medicare and a supplemental insurance will pay for 100% of mental health treatment, if you can find a provider who takes Medicare and Medicare. I run a large behavioral health group, and actually 80% of our psychiatrists take Medicare, but it's hard to get in. We have about half dozen psychologists who take Medicare. So it's possible. I've got a list of Medicare providers. I'll be glad to share that. But the less people that take it in an insurance pool, the more busy those people are going to be and more difficult to get in. The majority of psychiatrists and therapists in this community do not take.
Okay, thank you. I think this is one Dr. Watson may want to answer. Are children becoming addicted to their cell phones? What can we do as grandparents to divert them from their cell phone compulsion?
It's on? Oh, good to know. I think studies have come out, they're starting to come out to look at how cell phones are actually impacting brain development for kids. I think the biggest challenge that we have is like, once the cell phone era is here, it's probably not going back. But I think for each individual person, like what I do for myself is, number one, I don't sleep with a cell phone right near my bed, because studies are coming out saying that there's a lot of energy that may be impacting brain development. Anyway, so I think one of the things that you can do is have your own individual methods of trying to get the phones out of the kids' hands. Hey, let's go out. Let's go, camping. Let's go horseback riding. One of the things that I see, if you go out to dinner these days, and with kids and families, everybody has their phone. They're not talking during the dinner, right? So there's a part of that that's not going to change. It's not going to change. So what you can do is try to do is individual strategies. And we're also at an age, like if somebody sends me a text, if I don't respond in like a minute, after about 20 minutes, are you okay? Did you get my text? I'm like, I'm actually driving down the freeway. Give me a chance to get to a safe place. So we now have gotten to this age. So what I tell parents and grandparents, we have to learn about the technology, but I do think we need to try to implement strategies to help these kids, because they're so wired, literally.
I'm going to add to that. Cell phones, first of all, it's not the making phone calls, it's the internet part of cell phones and everything that teenagers do. Cell phone is the crack of teenagers today. And I run a parent group, and that is the number one complaint, that they can't get their kids' cell phone. And we don't have time, but go online and look on the American Academy of Pediatrics and their suggestions for cell phone use and what age. You'd be amazed compared to what you see. You know, a child shouldn't have a cell phone until they're 13 years old.
But
Now,
that's not going to happen.
Well, there are parents who do that. There are parents, and the key is monitoring it and staying on top of it and being in control early. Because if you don't do it, by the time they're 13, 14, and they've had control, it's a done deal.
My point was, once they get that phone and get used to it, then you cannot take it from them. But if you start that strategy when they're 2 or 3 or 4, you got a shot.
You're the parent, you make the rules.
I understand. And the gentleman up front said, you're the parent, you make the rules, you pay for the phone, it's actually your phone. But you know what? Kids, the phones get taken away, they go to their friends, they get burner phones, they have every way you can't even imagine to go get cell phone use. And again, it's not about making phone calls. Okay? Anyway, next question.
Okay. All right. This one is someone who wants to know, how do you deal with grown children without enabling or abandoning them? And stating this always been a dilemma, but they listen, but usually after the fact when it's far too late. So the stress is, how do you deal with grown children?
First off, Dr. Ellis mentioned a word that's important, and what's the difference between enable and support? Okay? Support is a two-way street, meaning you can help your children and at whatever age. I've got grown children, they're 30s, I help them, but it's always a two-way street. They do their part, they do their part, I do my part, and it's kind of a contract, unspoken. Enabling, on the other hand, is a one-way street. They don't do their part, and you continue to do your part. And that means you are enabling them, meaning keeping them stuck at whatever problem they have. So that's my opinion, is making sure you know the difference between support and enabling. And support sometimes is necessary at whatever age.
All right, thank you. This can, all three of you may want to address this. How can the topic of therapy become a more open subject among society? It's had such a stigma attached to it for so long. I wish more people were not so scared to admit that they need it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think that's it's an unfortunate thing that we deal with, is that, you know, there is so much stigma or self-stigma, and as a clinician, I've seen it. I can't seem to use the microphone, but I've seen that change a little bit. You know, over the last few years, it seems to be softening. But you know, it's definitely a problem, and I wish that we didn't have that stigma, because I think everybody could benefit from it. And it seems like when there's something in the news where a celebrity admits to having mental issues, that it seems like that gets better. So, but no, it's a real problem, unfortunately, that we all deal with.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, you know, like public health approaches to make things okay. I think if you look at in the past, like once upon a time, you know, drunk driving was not, you know, it was bad, but not nearly as. And then a mother lost her daughter, and then here comes MAD. So MAD, with the public health approach, made it very clear, hey, drinking and driving is not okay. I think in the same way for mental health, if we get more of that kind of strategy to make it okay for people to seek help, because it's actually just, if, for example, if you hurt your leg, you would go to a physician to heal that. So I think if all of us can work together to take more of the mental health, the public health approach to make it more okay.
And lastly, on a good note, it is improving. It's much, much better, and for all those reasons that they mentioned. And the more people are willing to share what their experiences are, the less stigma there'll be about that.
Yeah, I think that's in the same accord. I think that's why we're starting to see a lot more public figures coming out acknowledging that they've had mental health issues, and I think that's all contributing to reducing the stigma that's attached to it. Okay. Here's one. How to deal with a defiant teen, a 15-year-old male who you adopted and you're no longer giving him medication that he was on before the adoption. I have a question. Why do we stop the medication? I'm not clear on, was it medicine for health reasons, or without knowing the details, I'm not sure how that plays into his attitude. But I guess the focus is, how do you deal with a defiant 15-year-old whom you have adopted?
I think our reluctance to answer the question is an indication of how A, broad that topic is, and B, difficult that topic is. But I'll give you my thoughts on it. There's two halves. One, in general, parenting involves structure and limit setting and boundaries. And you set, kids love boundaries, although they won't tell you they do. And they love limits and rules. And there's three things that go together: limits, consequences, and follow through. Means you need to be home at 10 o'clock, that's the limit. Consequences are, if you don't come home after 10, you're not going out the next 2 weekends, and follow through is you do it. And when the kid comes home at 10:05, you don't say, how could you do that? You say, oh, I respect your right to spend 5 minutes more out tonight and choose not to go out the next 2 weekends. But there's another part to this. So limits, consequences, and follow through. But when you get a really defiant teenager, all that goes out the window. And I feel for parents when I see them, because at the end of the day, you can do all that, and the child could turn to you and go, you know what? F you. I'm walking out the door. I'm doing what I want. I'll be home tomorrow. What? Paddles? We won't go there. But anyway, that's the nightmare. And so, hopefully not getting to that, but when people get that far, it becomes a difficult issue. But otherwise, it's parenting skills.
Okay.
Do you want to ask something about that?
Also, positive rewards.
Great.
And that can just be positive words.
Exactly. We call it catch them doing something right. Because if you're always telling them what they did wrong and what's bad, and then you're right. You're going to get a defiant teenager. I mean, again, we can give a whole workshop on parenting skills. Part of that is what I call ABCs. There are A issues, B issues, and C issues. A issues are non-negotiable. Like, we're going to go to Matt. If you take drugs, if you hit me, if you don't go to school, we're going to have a problem. C issues are, you're going to make your own choices, like how you wear your hair, or whether you clean your room. And everybody gets their own choices. And B is, you want it one way, I want it another way, and we're going to negotiate. Those parents who make everything an A are going to have a rebellious teenager. Okay, so if cleaning your room is just as important as not doing drugs, eventually the kid's going to say, the heck with everything. So, but you're absolutely right. Catching them doing something right and letting them, all your kids, even that most defiant teenager in that question, they want you to love them and care about them and accept them, and they want your love. So catch them doing something right, and you'll make a big influence.
Okay. Question is, how can you recommend any podcasts, websites, or books on this topic of stress that's good for students?
I'm going to take it anyway. I have a website, not a website. I'm going to just give you the ones that I know of, and maybe they could share. How many of you have heard of Calm? Only one. Amazing. I have Calm on my, it's you. Two. There are two, at least two. I forgot the name of the other website. There's two very well-known mindfulness apps. They're not websites, they're apps. And you have to pay like $50 for the year. But it's a never-ending opportunity to tune into whatever your issue is: sleep, anxiety, fear, relaxing, and there's an endless supply of meditations that it will take you through. And there's more than just that. He's a little more socially media savvy than I am.
There's a site that I really like for podcasts, and it's called Dharma Seed. So DHARMASEED. There's a lot of great podcasts and talks on that. So. Donnie's got nothing. Yeah.
Okay. Question, how do you find a new purpose in retirement? You were previously tied to a daily job, so how do you find that new purpose?
I actually work with a lot of people going through that, and the people I've had most success with are the people who have come to me a year before they retired, because we work on it for the year, and we talk about that question, and we talk about interests and things that they can do and preparing for leaving their job. But one of the most important, just simple way of looking at it is whether they're working or not, I have people look at what are the values and skills that made them successful at work. And whether go to a job or not, you take those with you. In other words, if you're honest, if you're hardworking, if you communicate well, if you are intelligent and creative, all those things are still inside of you, whether you have a job or not. And if you can tap into that, you can get through that loss of purpose and so on.
Okay, here's one regarding chronic pain. If you have chronic pain and use pain meds, medical marijuana in the past, but now over-the-counter pain meds daily, does that make you a quote-unquote addict? And I'll address some of this initially, and then I'll turn it over. It makes you, if you're using it to treat something, it makes you dependent. If whatever you're using to treat something, and you find that your behavior changes as a result of not being able to access it, that's when you become an addict. If you're thinking about the next time you can get it, your whole life revolves around getting whatever that is, that's addiction. If you need it because you have chronic pain and you take a couple Tylenol every 8 hours, that's dependence, and that's slightly different from a medical standpoint, from addiction. But I will turn it over to the addiction specialists because they deal with this all the time. And they'll tell me that I'm wrong.
I didn't quite understand the first part. Are you
Yeah,
still
if you have
utilizing
chronic pain
marijuana
and you're
for
using pain meds, like previously you were using medical marijuana, and now you're using over-the-counter meds daily, does that make you an addict?
Yeah, I mean, I think your answer really was really solid, is that once you become kind of reliant on something, but over-the-counter stuff doesn't really have the same sort of abuse potential that a lot of the other stuff like the opiates and marijuana really kind of have with it too. I don't know if we answered your question or not, but.
Okay. And this one says, none of you mentioned how helpful it is to, quote, let go and let God. It is very stress relieving to give your big problems to God and let Him help you. Why is this not an option? And is it because it doesn't cost enough? Actually, it was brought up in one I believe Dr. Gelbart, about being addressed, but did you want to address it more?
One of the habits of happiness that I mentioned was spiritual engagement, whether that's through God or God as you see it, or in our treatment programs in AA they talk about spirituality, not necessarily God of religion, although that's fine, but it's something greater than yourself, and that sense is important, and to try to address that.
Okay, question. Why aren't more psychotherapists addressing brain health? For example, how can people be expected to think positive or be present when their brain, amygdala, is wired to be fearful, anxious, in order to stay safe, and our nervous systems play a role in feeling good due to childhood trauma, negative core beliefs, etc.? How do we get psychotherapists addressing overall brain health, I guess.
I think one of the things, there are people who are trauma specialists. I mean, I think the ACE study did show that people who are exposed to stress early on, their brains tend to work a little differently. But there are therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists who actually specialize in trauma. So I think for the person who's seeking help, it's really good to try to talk to maybe your primary care physician person who would have referrals, because I think a lot of times people don't understand, well, who do I need to actually go see if I have this problem? Because somebody who's a generic therapist may not be skilled in that particular area. So I think you have to kind of search it out, and starting with your primary care physicians and getting some referrals is one way to go.
All right, and they want someone requested information on the website to learn languages. I believe that was mentioned earlier.
Duolingo, Duolingo. You know, I don't know the exact website, but Google Duolingo, and it's got dozens of languages. DUO and LINGO.
And what appears to be our final question is a request for tools. How do you let your children know it's time to move on, or become older children? If I'm understanding this correctly.
Well, I'm assuming you mean move on, like move out of the house.
Doesn't say, but I'm hoping that's what it means.
You know, and that is I mean, the world's tough out there, really, and this is, they say, you know, the first time where our children will have a more difficult time having a better life than we've had in terms of earning and so on. So a lot of kids are going home, you know, and living with their parents. I mean, you can have a great career, a great job, and you know, you may not be able to afford a home in the South Bay. So when is it time to tell them to move out? You know, that's individual, and that's, again, back to what I said, limits and when you think you're enabling instead of supporting, then it's time to start taking a look at that and sit down with your child, and if you won't, or adult child, and if they won't address what your needs are, then you set the limits, and again, like somebody else said, it's your house, you know? And sometimes you have to have tough love, as you've heard, and say, you know, you got to go and you got to make it on your own.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming, and particularly I want to thank our panel, Dr. Watson, Dr. Lichtman, and Dr. Gelbart. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Drive safely. Have a good evening.